Alright, it's Liam. I want to thank everyone at the Oasis Podcast, as you were.
Hello and welcome back to the Oasis Podcast, the ultimate audio guide to Oasis. Hope you guys were all right. Double header today. First off, it's an interview with Hannah Fern, who's a journalist for the Independent as well as a few other places, and she's a regular on the Oh God What Now podcast, which is fantastic. And we've also got a bit of a connection as well. So that is very entertaining. I hope you guys enjoy that. Also, in the second part, we will be listening to the audio from a couple of YouTube videos I've put up recently, which is me ranking every Oasis music video. Go and check them out on YouTube, because it's probably the better place for them, because obviously you get to watch the video as you listen to it. But I know that some people don't do the YouTube thing and they just like podcasts. So I thought, well, let me chuck it in here. So yeah, either way, or check out both if you want, whatever you want to do. It's all good. Nothing really in the world of Oasis news. The only thing I suppose is that the Apple exclusive Liam tracks from a couple of months ago, I Don't Want to Be a Soldier Mama and Too Good for Giving Up, have now appeared on streaming platforms. So if you're a Spotifyer and you wanted to listen to them, then you can now more easily. Noel's been releasing a few more dates. But other than that, all quiet on the Western Front. Liam's gone very quiet on Twitter, to be fair. I don't know if it's what's going on there, but yeah, very quiet. Not even commenting on Manchester City potentially winning the league. So, very weird. All right, well, look, let's go over now to my interview with Hannah Fern, and I'll see you on the other side.
I don't like the way that you're walking away with the hopes and the dreams that we shared. What's lost in the matches away from the line, and you wait days unprepared. The sun don't shine on a garden that's mine, and it's keeping me out in the cold. I just try and take a look in an old picture book at the story I knew that was told. Blasting away all our fantasies today. Shine on through the darkness, you're burning brighter every day.
Welcome back. No, you've not been on before. Welcome to the Oasis Podcast, Hannah Fern. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. This is very exciting.
Well, this is a little bit strange and unusual, because if people are aware of you, it's probably from the Oh God What Now podcast, or maybe they've read your stuff. You're a journalist and broadcaster and stuff. But we've got a little bit of a history as well, haven't we?
We have. We go a long way back, James.
Yes. And I was all ready to come on here and be like, oh, well, thank you so much. I just really want to say, I was so grateful that you used to come along to our gigs. You're desperately, when you're in a band and you're a teenager, you're desperately trying to grab people to come along to gigs, and, you're struggling because you want to get booked again. And so you're just desperately trying to grab your mates, and you were always there. You and your friend Rachel,
there.
you were stalwarts, you were brilliant, and you came along, and I was just ready to shower you with praise. But then I heard the most recent episode of what was it, the Patreon extra of Oh God What Now?
No, it's called Oh God What Else. Yeah.
Oh God What Else?
I was chatting Britpop with Andrew Harrison, back then editor of Select magazine, now one of the founders of Oh God What Now, and I dropped a bombshell.
And I said, oh, brilliant, Hannah's on, talking about Britpop, fantastic. Hannah's mentioned the band. My face lights up. How exciting that my band gets mentioned on this sort of this global phenomenon of a podcast. And then you go and call us absolute rubbish. Anna, I'm so shocked.
I'm sorry.
There was nobody in Didcot I was interested in, other than, interestingly enough, if anybody here is happens to be a equally fan of the Britpop years, there is a podcast called the Oasis Podcast, which is doing really well. And oddly enough, that is produced by my old schoolmate, who was also in sixth form. And he was in a band that we used to follow around. Sorry, James, if you're listening, they were rubbish. But him and his mates were the only people who shared that interest in Didcot, and, they weren't my bag. I was looking for somebody else.
I'm sorry. But, James, it was a great time for all of us. And you probably were the most exciting thing happening in Didcot at the time.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, who's Didcot?
Yeah, that's the faintest praise I think you can ever say.
Do you remember the Candy Skins once came to play Didcot Civic Hall? Were you there for that?
I was there. Yeah, of course.
That was probably the most exciting thing that ever had happened in Didcot, beginning or end. I don't know.
I've still got my Candy Skins ticket here. We've got when me and my present wife got together, we got a load of our gig tickets, and we've got the Melody Maker front page from July 1995.
Oh,
and we've put the gig tickets around them.
That's lovely.
Yeah, so we've got like Nebworth. She saw Supergrass at the old jail in Abingdon in 94 and 95. Yeah, and so we got the Candy Skins there.
Guys, so the thing is, you two, you guys are a little bit older than me.
Yeah.
So you were out and about when I couldn't quite go to those gigs. I was just a little bit too young.
Yeah.
That was sad. I feel like I missed the party by about 2 years. It was great what I saw and the fun I had, but Supergrass at Abingdon, I was just a little bit too young.
I know. It's so funny on this because you hear the regret of people, especially in the the Oasis world. So many people say like, "Oh, I'm so gutted." They came to my hometown when I was 15. I couldn't go, or I chose not to go because I was, trying to snog a girl or something. Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, oh, I did get to go later in 98 or whatever, and it's like it wasn't the same. But,
you went to Nebworth, didn't you?
Yeah. I was at Nebworth, and so I saw them 7 times. Nebworth was pretty decent. You might have heard of it.
But I was gutted I didn't go to that. No, shame. Never mind.
But
I did
you
see Blur in 1995 though. Yeah, I did manage to convince my mum to let me and Rachel go to Blur, and so we were only 13 or 14, and it was at Wembley. So it wasn't a cool, small, intimate Blur gig. It was one of their massive stadium tours, but it was great fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, look, the reason to have you on today, well, no, the main thing is we've kind of changed the subject here. I want to go back to the fact you said my band was rubbish on a podcast, right? So, okay, what I'll give you was, yes, we couldn't really play any instruments, right? That's fine. I accept that. And I can't sing. Fine, I accept that. But I could dance around in an approximation of Liam, Jarvis, and Damon, I think in a very good way, and the drummer could play, and the songs were all right. So I put that to you.
The songs were all right. I remember you got a review in Night Shift once that was absolutely scathing. I've never forgotten it. I bet you haven't either.
Yeah, no, I've got that.
Has it been mentioned on this podcast before?
Yeah, well, I've definitely posted it. I've still got it. It sort of said.
So, for those of you who don't know, Night Shift was a Oxford music magazine.
Still going.
Is it still going? Amazing.
Yeah.
With gig listings in, and everyone picked it up every week to see what was going on. And Vision got a very scathing review comparing them to Embrace.
Yeah, 10th rate copy of not even Oasis but bloody Embrace. But I was quite happy with that. We were like, hey, we got compared to Oasis and Embrace, brilliant. And then we got...
The problem for you is that at that time there were some bands in Oxford that were incredibly good, some of which didn't go on to do anything, and I didn't really understand why. There was the band called Dustball, who were like a bit Idlewildy, and almost they were indie, but they were sort of on the corner of a bit of kind of pop punk that was coming out at that time. They were so good, and they broke up in 1999. And as I remember it, was because one of them was like wanting to go to uni, and they couldn't really get it together to stay together. But they were very good, and I still listen to that album quite a lot now. Yeah. It's really stood up, and I have to say I don't listen to your EP. I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
did your podcast event up in London, you guys played, didn't you? I couldn't come because of childcare, and I was gutted. But that would have been fun. I would have liked to see you then. Yeah.
Well, we didn't do any. We didn't do any original songs. We just did. Well, our songs weren't original anyway, but they were.
We didn't do any of our derivative songs.
Yes, no, we didn't do any original or derivative songs. No, we just did Joel on piano and Romain on drums and me singing. We just did a few Oasis things, like just little piano based Oasis things. So it was good fun. It was nice to sort of scratch that itch. And obviously, you know, in other than like you and Rachel and my sister and about 3 or 4 other people, you know, that was typically our crowd. Whereas actually this was like 200 people. Obviously they were there to see Tony McCarroll, but not necessarily to see a piano-led 3-piece playing Oasis covers. But that was really good fun. It was very special, actually. I'd look back and I think, what the bloody hell was I thinking? Because not only did I like arrange this gig like with Tony McCarroll, plus a bunch of people played live, I had to figure it all out. And then, oh, by the way, I'm going to learn a set of Oasis like piano songs. Yeah, pretty mad, but anyway. So that podcast you were on anyway with the editor of Select magazine, I mean, that must have been just great fun to bring that fan perspective with someone who was really there, you know, driving it at the time.
That was so exciting. My writing is mainly about politics and social affairs, and I normally appear on those pods to talk about politics. But there's this spin-off, and they said to me, what kind of music do you like? What do you want to talk about? So I'd really like to talk with you about the 90s. And so, it was such a good chat, and really interesting to hear it from, Andrew's in his 50s now and was very much like at work, living the dream at that time. And so to, hear about the decisions they were making about who to put in the mags and who, how to sell this brilliant new wave of music. It was just fantastic, really. I really enjoyed that chat. Go and have a listen, guys. You do have to sign up.
You do have to pay like £5.
You have to pay, but then you get to hear all of the brilliant, best sort of centre-left political journalists, Remain supporters in Britain talking about politics too. So hey, it's fun.
Excellent. Well, like we said about. It's interesting because that was the Romaniacs, wasn't it, originally?
It used to be the Romaniacs, now it's sort of for today's world, where we are.
And it literally isn't, oh God, what now? Because it's, although I don't know if we turn the table now. Obviously, this is a sort of a pretty mad kind of week. We're talking on May the 3rd, which is just before the local elections coming up, and it's just before the coronation. So it's a very, very strange and unusual time in kind of politics at the moment.
It's a weird time. It's a nervous time, I think, if you are someone who is very frustrated with the current government and would like to see the end of the last 13 years, which I imagine quite a few listeners to this podcast feel the same way. We've got the local elections coming up, which everyone is sort of seeing as a test of the appetite for a Labour landslide next year. And I recently posted a sort of idle comment on Twitter about Keir Starmer, and the response to it was quite staggering, and it made me realise there are so many Labour voters who are on the very left of Labour who are Corbynites, yes. So it doesn't represent the whole party, it doesn't represent the kind of general electorate, as social media never does, but there's a large proportion of previous Labour voters who are saying that they will not vote Labour for the first time ever, many of whom who did vote Blair through the 90s. Because they talk about how they were also swept away by this kind of exciting era of new politics, new bands and everything, the kind of Britpop, Cool Britannia thing, but they now feel very strongly that they cannot vote for a Labour led by Keir Starmer because he's, rolling back on a lot of the pledges he made when he became leader of the party. And if there is a revolt of that size of the left of the party walking away and voting Green or not voting at all, I actually don't think that a Labour victory is as secure as I assumed it was for next year in the general election. So I'm now a bit nervous. And of course, they're only a proportion. So, but I think tomorrow, as you say, we're talking just before the local elections. Tomorrow will be a good test. If there is a very, very significant shift to Labour in the local elections, then that'll be a bit reassuring that things are moving.
Well, it is interesting, really, that there's really interesting parallels, I think, with now and with Tony Blair, how when he came through in the in the 90s, because I mean the only frustrating thing is there isn't also this brilliant, exciting, vibrant music scene to kind of go alongside it, which
No.
is a shame. Maybe that
Or
will come from
James, are
somewhere.
we just too old to know? That's the question.
Well,
I often wonder if I'm just not listening to the right stuff. My kids are too young to be bringing it to me. They're only, early primary school age. And, me and my husband are just too busy working to go to gigs. Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like I'm not tapped in anymore. It makes me sad. But I'm not sure I would know if there was an amazing scene about to burst now.
No, well, I don't think there is obviously scenes, and there's like people selling out venues, and there's people still doing really well, but it's not kind of that. It's not the indie thing. It's not the rock thing. There's plenty of other stuff going on, and like the post-punky kind of side, like Idols and those sort of bands have been. But I'm sort of so over that. I'm just not interested.
And they've been around quite a while now as well.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel fresh.
No,
I like Idols too, but they're not. Yeah, they're not fresh.
Yeah, but yeah, so other than that, which is a shame, but yeah, it does really feel to me like, when it was coming through in the 90s, we'd had this like decade plus of Tory rule, and then a Labour that had been very much to the left under Kinnock then, and obviously John Smith briefly, then shifting to the centre under Tony Blair, and there was the whole like getting rid of Clause 4, and there was that, the fact they were New Labour, and Mandelson being, what was it, very comfortable with people being very rich, or whatever the phrase was.
Yeah.
So there was definitely that at the time, and I still get that feeling now that actually, and for me personally, I think Jeremy Corbyn's policies and stuff, if it was like in a vacuum, which of these, if you just strip it all away, I'd be like, yep, that's exactly where I went. But I understand from talking to a lot of people, on all sides of the political spectrum, and especially with just how vilified he was in the press, there was no way that he was ever going to win, even if the policies had been absolutely, loved by everyone. It was just never going to happen. So
the policies were pretty popular. Actually, even some of his policies on business were quite popular among business. The problem was him, definitely, as a character. He was a bad leader. He came with all of the kind of associated baggage around his relationships with arguably terrorist states and so on, and his history. He was just too much of an activist. He was not a leader of people. And there are parallels, but sadly the problem is that Keir Starmer is not the adept leader of people that Tony Blair was. And as a result, he's got a fractured party that is not very coalesced behind him. And at worst, the membership of the party is all over the place. A lot of people are leaving. I mean, in terms of, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the criticism of Starmer, and I am hoping that his tactics are to kind of tank very heavily to the centre, almost centre right, some of his statements recently around immigration and so on, to win votes, and then when he's actually in Downing Street to kind of, revert to who he really is. Because if you look at his career history, a lot of it is quite reassuring. But then the truth is, I mean, people will have heard of this Overton window thing about where you move the centre ground, and the last 13 years have moved where we think the centre of politics is, and Blair was very much centrist, and Starmer I think is at heart too, but with the current debates around small boats, immigration, Brexit, where he's having to pitch himself at the centre, or thinks he has to, I don't know which one you want to say about that, it is further to the right of some of the early Blair stuff. Not maybe the later Blair stuff, not the post-Iraq stuff, but the very early founding New Labour values weren't the same. It's interesting, it's happened very quickly, because 2 years ago, Starmer set out a set of pledges which he won leadership of the party with, which were definitely to the left of New Labour. And people who were saying, oh God, this is the end of days, I was pointing out that, they were very willing to vote for a Blair government that was doing things that were very much to the economic right of what Starmer was promising to do. But that he has dropped most of those pledges. And the problem is, at the moment, there's a bit of a vacuum where he hasn't replaced them with new commitments. And hopefully that will come quickly. And maybe he's waiting to get the local elections over with, so he looks like the party in waiting. If there's a very, very significant shift to Labour, then the onus will be on him to show what he'll do with that, electoral strength. So we'll see. And I'm hoping those commitments will be reassuring. We've had something on housing recently, commitment to build quite a lot, which is very welcome. Housing's a huge problem, and neither party has grappled with it properly in the last decade. So maybe there'll be more to come. Yeah.
See, I get the impression that it's really even all throughout this whole period, ever since he's been leader, the idea is just shut the fuck up and let the Tories balls it all up, and then just do the minimum you possibly can to make yourself look stupid, and then just stroll in on. Yeah,
it's,
you know what
it's
I
a
mean?
good strategy if it wasn't for two issues. One is that for all of his faults, of which there are myriad, Sunak is much more together than Johnson. So Johnson was doing a great job of ballsing everything up at every moment, and all you'd have to do is sit back and wait for that, ego to explode, basically. Yeah. But Sunak is not, he's making loads of mistakes, but he makes them in a more kind of professional way. So people don't notice. It's not as embarrassing, right? So he's not losing support in the speed at which Boris was. That's one problem. The second problem is this problem that Labour have got with their own original supporters, and the amount of noise that the left of the party is making about what he's not saying enough on.
I don't think
Labour always has this problem. The Tories will just get behind people and try and make it work. I mean, Truss was the exception that proves the rule, because that was just such a catastrophic disaster, 46-day disaster. But generally, once they pick someone, they do coalesce behind them and they just make it work.
Yeah.
Until it can't. Whereas Labour never. Maybe Blair was the exception that proves the rule there, because he did manage to get. There was dissent, but it was quieted in 97.
I just think it's come to that point where, all of that stuff, like if you're in the sort of the left wing bubble, and you can get kind of and then all the other fiddly debates and stuff that just take up so much time about trans issues and all that sort of stuff that's massive if you're on Twitter, but if you're just watching, if you're the 20% that swing the election, or the 10% or 3% or whatever it is that actually swing the election, probably don't care about any of that.
I agree. I would say that, especially with that issue, it seems like if you're on social media, like everybody either strongly identifies as gender critical or a trans rights activist or something, and they have a strong view on that thing. Actually, if you look at the polling generally, most British people are generally in support of trans people having more rights, and they don't have to think about it in any more detail than that.
Yeah.
And so, it's just not, they're socially mostly quite liberal, and that's kind of the end of it. There's no more identity to it than that. So, I think you're right. It's very easy to get, especially if you do my job, to feel like Twitter is reflecting what's really going on, but it's a reminder to get out of London sometimes, go and meet some people. I was in Cardiff yesterday for work. Nice reminder that ordinary people aren't thinking about the things I think about for 90% of the day every day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, like we were saying, there does feel like this sort of this we're in this sort of strange situation now where we've had all these years of Tory rule. They've been falling apart, and there's a Labour leader, a centrist Labour leader. And I just wanted to pick up with you about something that you've been talking about, and I know you've written about it as well. It's obviously a very important moment in your life, which is when Tony Blair came to your school. Kind of our school, because it was the girls' school, but I was there at sixth form. But
were you there? Because it was 96. I worked out it was 96, so you can't have been invited because you were still.
No, so I would have been
year 11 then.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have been year 11 over at the boys' school. So
So it was Blair came to my school, Didcot Girls' School, to launch part of his education strategy in 96, and I remember this day with such detail, which is remarkable, really, considering I was sort of 13, although maybe it was just like an indication of, I guess, the person I was going to go on to be and the things that interested me. But the sixth form, most of the sixth form were invited to go and watch this speech, but then a few people from the younger years of the school were also invited by invitation only. Obviously, they didn't just roll a Didcot into that. So I got picked out of my form group, I guess by my form tutor, Alex Galvin, who I'm still in touch with now, funny enough. She was part of my Britpop awakening. She used to take me things like Elastica and bring it in from her record collection and slip it to me in form.
I remember Miss Galvin. She was super cool. Yeah, was she? So she's still cool, is she?
She's still cool. Yeah, she must be like she's only about 10 years older than me, so she must be like just 51 or something now. 50.
Shout out Miss Galvin.
But she's super cool. Anyway, so she must have chosen me to go to that. She must have spotted something there and thought Hannah will get something out of this. And so I was crammed into like the gods in our little drama studio in our school. And it was absolutely boiling. I don't know about you, James, but almost everything I remember about 1996, 1997 was always hot and sunny.
Yeah.
like election day. But it was like, anyway, it's the year before, but it was such a hot day. It was early June. And I was absolutely boiling up sitting in this seat, but it was just so inspiring to watch this guy because you could really feel the kind of anticipation. And to hear him talking about meritocracy, basically, and how he was going to change state education so that everybody had equal chances at achievement, not just in terms of your exam results, but also, you know, how you go on to make connections and life chances, work chances, and so on. It just really spoke to me. You know, I am an ordinary state school kid. My dad did go to uni. I suppose you described my family as middle class. Certainly at that point, my dad was a public servant. He was working in the railway, and obviously he completely disagreed with privatisation, but his career was being buffeted by that happening. And just the kind of excitement of hearing it from the horse's mouth, really, about what Tony Blair wanted to do with the country and what he wanted to do for me, for people like me, and what it would mean for me. It really felt quite personal. And to hear young people in sixth form asking questions of him as well, to feel like he listened, he wanted to ask questions of people who were 16, 17, 18, to hear what kind of Britain they wanted and what was frustrating them about the years of conservatism. And it was powerful.
Ask me my 3 main priorities for government, and I tell you, education, education, and education. And I tell you my vision of the future. I would like a state education system in Britain so good, so attractive, that the parents choose to put behind us the educational apartheid of the past, private and state, and I don't believe anything would do more to break down the class divides that have no place in a modern country in the 21st century.
And that's the thing. So I was all in. You know, I couldn't vote for Blair because I was it was May 97 and I only turned 18 in the May 98. But you know, I was absolutely all in. And it's so strange to me because that generation, you know, especially if you're into Britpop and things, it was just part and parcel of it. Like of course you were a Labour supporter because he was cool. Blur liked him, Oasis liked him, and the Tories were just like these old, horrible, evil people. And there was all the Tory sleaze at the time as well. They were always getting caught like wanking with oranges in their mouths and stuff. Like there was all kinds of sleazy shit going on. And Labour were just cool and good. And so it was so strange to me that over the years, now it's like when people of my generation at least are like not Labour supporters, I'm like, or Tory supporters. I mean, it's less so now with obviously everything that's happened. It's sort of even kind of, you know, people that did vote Conservative, a lot of them are probably now wavering because of just what a mess they've made of it. But it just doesn't compute to me. It's like, well, it's like you're supporting the bad guys, you know? And I know that's a really sort of blinkered view, probably from someone. You'd have to be what are we, exennials, I think, right? That middle bit between.
I think that really defines, because like millennials have a very different view about politics, definitely about very different view about like identity politics than I think we do. I think that people of our generation are progressive but pragmatic. I think we're more comfortable with compromise than people who are younger millennials are. So politics has really changed as well because of that sort of pressure from below to never compromise, which I think is a negative thing. I don't think it serves politics well. But they would say that I'm not idealistic enough, not pushing hard enough for what I really believe in. So that's a challenge. Yeah, I don't understand it either. But then, you know, so much water under the bridge. It's a long time ago. Economically, it's a long time ago. On the world stage, it's a very long time ago. people are right to point out, as as many commentators do at the moment, that while it might feel akin to 97 in terms of we are predicting a big Labour win after years of Tory rule and a party that's disintegrating, economically we are not in the position that we were as a country pre-Blair in 97. So there's not going to be this, even if we do get a landslide, it's not going to have that happy feeling. And the big risk for Labour is that they end up with 4 years and they can't achieve very much because of the situation economically, and then they lose to a reinvigorated Conservative Party after one term. That's a real risk. Because the situation is very bad economically. I would argue it's entirely self-imposed. It's largely linked to Brexit. Pandemic, obviously coalescing with Brexit was bad. But yeah, a lot of it is self-imposed. But we can't undo Brexit. Even if we do end up undoing Brexit over a period of 15 to 20 years, which I think is very likely, we're not going to do it in 4. So
no. There we go. Well, thanks for bringing me down there, but that's all
sorry.
good. But let's talk about music, shall we? So
Yes.
when you were getting into bands, like I say, you were a little bit younger than
A little bit younger,
a little bit younger. But what were the big ones for you, kind of? So you were very much more the Blur and
I was on the Blur side. Sorry, everyone. I was a real Blur kind of fan. I was all in for them. Wall-to-wall posters and everything. Completely obsessed.
The suburbs, they are dreaming, there a twinkle in her eye. She's been feeling frisky since her husband said goodbye. She wears a low-cut t-shirt, runs a little B&B. She's most accommodating when she's in her lingerie. While swapping is the future, you know that it will suit ya. Yes, the stereotype, there must be more to life.
You say you've seen, how many times did you say you've seen Oasis?
7
times. I think I've seen Blur 6 times now. 3 times in the kind of 90s and early 2000s, and then 3 times in the recent years where they've been doing reform gigs.
Sure.
I don't think I'll go again, I feel like I've seen them now a lot, and they're a great thing, but that's part of kind of the history, my music history, not necessarily need to be going to see them again. Who else did I love? I really loved all the girl-fronted bands. I find that really inspiring. Kaniki and Elastica and Echobelly and so on. It was a really great time to be like a young woman. People talk about like the ladette culture of the 90s as if it was a terrible thing. What I remember of it was that it was a time where you felt absolutely equally allowed to be having as much fun as your male pals, and that actually that hadn't been the case before that. That was kind of part of my early feminism, I think. It's like, if I want to drink a pint, I can drink a pint. I can wear jeans and trainers, and that's completely cool. No one's expecting me to be like tarted up in a dress. There were girls in Britpop who dressed in all kinds of ways. There was the kind of extreme like glitter feather boa type thing. There were the fishnets and the high heels and pencil skirts, and that was a fab look, and I did run with it a bit. But also jeans, DMs and a t-shirt were equally acceptable, and nobody would say that you were like, I don't know, there was no accusation that you were in some way less feminine for just being a girl who liked your DMs. And I feel like that was a great part of it at the time, the kind of sense of equality, and to see bands fronted by girls and so on.
And I think going out and about, going out in Oxford and things like that, it was like what you're saying about equality, both in sort of dress and things like that. Like boys wearing eyeliner.
We kind of all dressed the same. Like, so lads wearing eyeliner, Brian Molko look, but then there was also like, we basically all wore the same stuff, didn't we? Like flares, Adidas Sambas, and a kind of tee. With a band on or something.
And you check out, like I'd be checking out like cool looking guys more than every chicken outfit. Oh, check him out, but like there was do you remember the band Dreamweaver? They had a bass player. They were the bass player who was like ridiculously handsome. He had like amazing hair. I'd be like, God, look at his amazing hair. It's like, I'm like,
that's the great
man, but
thing.
you can appreciate a beautiful Gallagher cut or a Beatle cut.
I do think that there was something great about the fashion associated with music then, in that there was this kind of like anyone could do it. It was quite charity shop based. It had new and old references, 70s references, but then like new things. And it was quite achievable, but you could kind of find your own identity within it as well.
Yeah.
Except my bad hair. You see, the thing is, I've got really curly hair, fellow listeners, and back in the 90s, hair straighteners were not yet invented, so I couldn't get rid of it. And no one in my family's got curly hair. My children do now. But like, I didn't know how to look after it. And it took me until I was about 21 to learn what products I needed and everything to make the curl happen. I don't mind you saying, James, I just had shit hair and it was such a battle. And like, I went to, like I said on the other podcast, but I don't mind repeating it because it's such a moment of like true pain in my teens. I went to a hairdresser, a crap local hairdresser. I didn't go into Oxford and Tony and Guy or anything. I probably should have done. I went to a really bad local hairdresser in Goring and Streatley, and I asked for a cut. I took in a picture of Louise Wenner from Sleeper. I said, I want this haircut. What they should have said is, I'm sorry, we can't give you this haircut because you don't have straight hair. But instead, they took the money and gave me, I don't know, like a terrible semi-afro. It just was bad. And it took me years to rescue it anyway.
I would say you were sort of a pair apart from the Wanna Dies, if people remember. That was kind of your...
That
was kind of your...
A friend of ours, Hannah, had another friend called Hannah, and her nickname for me was Pa for ages. And I did look like Pa from the Wanna Dies from a distance.
That was a good look. Yeah, I love the Wanna Dies. Great band.
It wasn't a good look for a girl, but thank you.
I do look back at it now and just think, actually, like, it was such a funny time, really, that, that kind of swagger and strolling around and kind of having that confidence. Like it really was for me, like the confidence of being able to reinvent yourself. And I literally had curtains, and then one day I had a picture of Liam Gallagher from Ben Higgins's sister's Sugar magazine. Picture of Liam, I think probably from the Wonderwall video, and I went into the hairdresser, I want that, and it was just like, well, it was pretty easy.
Did it for you because you've got the kind of hair that supports it. Like, that's fine. They did you a good job. But
a little bit trickier with the curtain, with the curlier hair. But yeah, I mean, that must be, as I said, hair straighteners, what a revelation in hair technology.
Yeah, amazing. My teeth have been so different. I could have had that haircut. It would have changed my life. Now that I can afford it, I'm genuinely thinking of chemically straightening my hair, which is like, I'm 40 years old now. I really need to just accept how I look, not battle against it. But I think those early formative memories have never quite gone.
Well, that's the thing. What's cool, it's difficult because I don't know if you've seen it, there's an advert on at the moment for, I can't remember if it's car insurance or something. It's Switch, and it's a guy with curtains, and he's like,
oh, I know, I've seen that, and you think, how can this be back? How can anyone possibly want 90s curtains? But I see kids dressing like kind of almost Britpoppy around now.
Well, it feels like early 90s. I think you've got a lot of that kind of look now with it's like it's almost like early 90s, like with perms on top and things. I'm like, when did I miss a meeting or something? When did perms become acceptable again for like
Well,
for boys?
Teenage girls are wearing like baby doll dresses with t-shirts underneath again, which is very like mid-90s.
Yeah.
And there are things that I go in the shop now sometimes, you know, like a normal like high street shop, and I think, okay, I can't wear anything in here because I'm literally going to look like I'm wearing my teenage wardrobe, and like that's not a good look on a 40-year-old. So yeah.
It was funny. I was at Truck Festival a couple of years ago, and there's like retro clothes like stall. And I went in all retro clothes. I'm expecting it to be like 60s and 70s, and it's all like these like
90s.
Adidas zippies and things. I'm like,
Yeah.
this isn't retro. This is like I've still got these in my wardrobe, and I'm like,
I'm still wearing these now.
God, yeah, I've still got a Who t-shirt that I bought when I saw the Who in 1997. It's still, you know, it's fine. But no, it is that has been unusual.
Life comes fast, James. We are old now. We have to accept it. We are the boring parents.
Well, what was it? It's something
We're not the young things anymore.
When you see like what always shocks me, the one that always shocks me is Paul Weller, how young Weller was, because he was like the older statesman in the 90s, but he was only in his mid-30s. So when you see him doing like Changing Man and stuff, he's like 35, and you're like, Jesus.
Yeah, that's frightening, isn't it?
Yeah. Or there was a frightening one. We did a sort of a best song of the 80s podcast, the last one that came up, and someone pointed out that someone chose Cliff Richard and the Young Ones, Living Doll, for like 1986. Cliff Richard is like 45. And I'm like, oh my God, that's me.
This is what I do think has changed, and I do think the Britpop era was part of that. Is that being 45 is not what it was in 1989 or even 1992. Like, it's just changed. Everything's changed. Life has elongated. Obviously, longevity has for a long time been rising, and we've been adjusting our expectations with that. But it's also to do with popular culture and everything as well. People do have a more youthful outlook in their middle life than they did when my parents were at that stage. I don't think my husband and I are anything like my parents were as middle-aged people. We just live differently, and I do think that the kind of Britpop era was part of that. This sort of I don't know. I think expectations of life changed, I think.
Yeah, and I think if you like look at festivals as well and things, it's like back in the 90s, festivals were for young people. That's it. Like older people did not go to festivals, and whereas now it's like, well, festivals are pretty much built for older people, families, plus also young people.
But also, there are ones that are, you know, still Reading is still heavily a youth festival, but other ones, as you say, are built around families, and you know, there's like kids areas and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Mr. Tumble playing on the main stage.
Exactly, yeah.
After Skunk and Nancy or something.
Nick Coate from the Candy Skins, literally, with his brilliant CBeebies series of excellent songs for kids.
Do you watch that with your kids?
Well, I'd love to. My little one is only 2.5 and she really likes it. But my eldest is scared of their dog. I don't know. It's the weirdest thing. She's I don't know. She saw one episode, it freaked her out, and now she runs away whenever he's on. And I find it deeply offensive because I love Nick Cope. And
well, I loved because before he got that show, I was into his earlier stuff, like his earlier children's work, which was 20 years after the Candy Skins. But no, because he'd done sort of 2 or 3 albums, and I was like, this is amazing. It's like the brilliant melodies of the Candy Skins, like, but with like just lovely
about poo.
And you know, crazy dinner lady, and but the thing is that there's a real sweetness. I find that a few of them like really moving. And then and we used to listen to it in the car all the time, like when my kids were younger. My kids are a bit older now, and so my kids were just a bit too old when the show started. It's like, no, they're off CBeebies now. They're into watching, I don't know, Fortnite streaming on YouTube or whatever. But yeah, and so it's sort of that I didn't really get to watch that. But yeah, I mean, I went to see him live, but actually, you know, when it's like a mum and baby sort of thing, you know, and like he does a load of those in. I don't know if he still does them now, but yeah, like just in.
He used to do them all around Oxfordshire, didn't he? But now he gets invited to like it's everywhere. He does like now because he's on TV. Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah,
and good for him because the Candy Skins deserve more attention than they got. So
absolutely.
Now he's just like a global kids superstar.
Yeah. And basically what he's done is like rewritten the Candy Skin songs, but then put like silly lyrics on them. So it's like, yeah,
But
fantastic.
you're right, there are some moving ones. There's one really sweet one, which is kind of about, and it's basically an anti-racist song, but all about different birds and different trees. And it's the nicest thing. I love it.
Yeah. No, there's one on his album called like Nana's Noodles. And it's just sort of the recipe of this grandmother's noodles.
I would sit there with my tongue out, wait impatiently for Nana to cook those noodles, especially for me. She would never make them too spicy, they were never too cold or hot. She'd make them so precisely in her special noodle pot. She went away to that kitchen in the sky, and how I cried. Then Nana was gone, so I made up this song. Nana's noodles, Nana's noodles, no creme brulee or takeaway could compare with Nana's noodles.
It's like, I'm not crying. It's like,
Well, if you want to feel old, Nick Cope's a granddad.
Oh my God. That's shocking, isn't it?
His grandson is on the show, Remy.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there we go. Well, look, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Hannah. I mean, we haven't talked about we haven't talked about Oasis. I mean, what's your?
No, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, go on then.
Well, ask me some questions. I don't know where to begin.
What do you think about Oasis?
What do I think about Oasis? I think that they were absolutely brilliant at the time and really, really important part of the Britpop movement. I think in recent years, it's been a shame to watch the kind of disintegration of the relationship between the brothers, and I don't think the music has been as good. There are a few Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds songs that I actually quite like, but I wouldn't, stream a whole album. And I do think a lot of it is imbued with what I honestly think, and I hope I don't offend any listeners with this, because obviously your listeners are, extremely into them still, most of them. I think there's something of the kind of laddish swagger that I now find quite difficult. That I find it like so blokey to be almost misogynistic, and that I struggle with that side of it now, and that's probably why I've disconnected a little bit in recent years. I've gone back and I've listened to, I was listening recently to some of the stuff for that recording I was doing. I went back and listened to a load of Britpop stuff to think about what songs I wanted to bring into that discussion. But oh God, what else? And I listened to the Long Pigs, She Said, and there's a lyric in there that I just never noticed, that you better hit her. Like, I wasn't picking up on that stuff when I was young. And I'm not, there's nothing like that in Oasis, but there's some misogyny that was still kind of around in society then that I didn't pick up on at the time, and that I think this kind of like the kind of swaggery, arrogant blokishness of who Oasis members in their new incarnation still are now, I really struggle with now, and I've kind of disconnected from. That's what I think, and I hope it doesn't upset people for me to say that.
And does that affect, like, when you go back and listen, like, would you just go and put on Definitely Maybe, or put on Morning Glory, or is it like the image now and what that's kind of connected to is like, you know what, I think I can spend my time listening to someone else that kind of I approve of more as people?
Yes, I think, but it's not just people. I think some of the songs from other bands have lasted better or have kind of matured better, and that in a way that I don't think some of the Oasis oeuvre has. I think when I listen to like Definitely Maybe or something now, it's obviously imbued with so many memories. I'm never going to like just hate it or anything. I feel because it connects me to that who I was then, the things I was doing then, and that era, and it's full of joy in that sense. But I can't say that if I heard it for the first time now, I'd have the same response. I don't think I would. Whereas I think that there are some songs from the 90s that I'm still having the same response to the music too, that I feel like it's really stood up. And I'm not saying that's every Blur song, by the way. You know, I loved Country House, and that's just a really shit song. As an adult who's consumed a lot more music now, I can tell you that is a terrible song. Whereas I loved it at the time. So I think there's some of that like there are some brilliant songs on the early Oasis albums, and then I think they get less successful as they go on.
Fair enough.
That's what I think.
And
but then, you know, I was obsessed with Blur, so I was on the other side of the camp.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the funny thing is though, like, yeah, there was that very much, especially like, and taking it back to our school, like you did have kind of like your gang of girls that like, because there was also the band that a lot of the girls were in, which is Kamikaze Kittens, who went on to play the first ever truck festival and things like that. So a bunch of our kind of gang ended up in and around that band. And then and then
I was the stand-in drummer for that. I think I did one gig.
Did you?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
So I played drums as well. You must have known that I played drums as well.
I do remember you playing drums. I didn't know you ever stood in for.
Yeah, one time, one very small gig. Yeah.
Okay. Well, but it was so it was in that regard, like there was kind of, it wasn't like, oh, Blur Oasis fans fighting on the beaches like bloody Quadrophenia.
No, it wasn't.
Most people loved both of them, but you would tend to favor one or the other, and it would tend to be, you know, the whether you were into the more laddish stuff or whether you're into the more quirkier stuff. So yeah,
I think that's very fair analysis, and I think that's true. But what's interesting about me and then my direction is that then I got very, very heavily into punk later.
Oh right.
I went like quite, when I was at uni, I was listening to a lot of punk and hardcore. Went quite sort of heavily into that, and still do listen to a lot of that as well.
What sort of stuff? Like back to 70s punk, or like the?
But a bit of both. But like also the kind of American-led stuff like Rancid and things like that, and Grade and Boy Sets Fire, and who was I thinking about yesterday? Like the early emo bands before it was called emo. It used to be called emo core. The band called Sunny Day Real Estate.
Oh yeah.
So that's interesting that I kind of went from the less swaggery side of Britpop to then being very into like quite angry music, quite politically angry music. I think like propaganda and stuff. Yeah.
There's a really good YouTube channel called Trash Theory. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they do like these little documentaries on.
That sounds like something off Nathan Barley, but I'll go look it up.
Yeah, but no, it's really good, and it does like, you know, they're just little music sort of analysis videos, but they do like before, a big series they've been doing is Before X, and it's like before emo, and so it will go back, and so I'd never heard of Sunny Day Real Estate until literally a couple of weeks ago when I watched this.
Oh really? There you go. Yeah. They always say if you hear something then it comes up twice in a couple of weeks.
It's funny though, isn't it?
But have a listen, they're very good.
Yeah, no, but that was definitely interesting. But it's so funny that like from that era, it did then tend to be like, well, actually it's Blur, Oasis, but Pulp are my favorite. You know, like actually from, you know, the band's name that I carved into my desk in my bedroom, which extremely pissed off my parents, was Pulp. I mean, Pulp were my band, really. Pulp, Oasis, and The Prodigy were my three. So yeah, so it is sort of funny that kind of we look back on
Yeah, we were all
those
listening
elements.
to all of it, but like everyone seemed to, it was just because of that ridiculous single thing that everyone was like kind of identified as one or the other. But also the thing that people forget about being a teen in the 90s that's so different to if you're young now is that you only had so much money, right? So sometimes you could only buy one or the other thing. So it's like, what did you want to invest your money in? Or what, if you could lobby to get one big ticket from your parents as like a Christmas present, what were you going to invest in? Because you couldn't see everything. Now, obviously, with the Spotify subscription, people don't have to make these kind of tribal decisions anymore. I think that's a really good thing for music, that people are I don't think people are tribal in the same way. And I think there are negatives in that you don't have scenes in the same way, that can help you kind of grow as a kid. But it's more democratic, isn't it, to be able to listen to a bit of anything.
Yeah, and I think that's made such a massive difference in that. Yeah, there is no kind of, like when we were in sixth form, it's like, oh, well, there's the grunge kids, and there's the guys that are into R&B, and there's the whatever. Whereas now everyone's just into everything, and you might have people that tend to veer towards one thing, but I think there's far less. Talking to my kids about like school, and it's like, no, they just don't have that. Everyone's got someone who's like really into hip hop might have spiky hair, whereas in our day, like the kids are into punk had spiky hair, and the kids are into hip hop. But it's a much more of a mishmash now, isn't it? But oh well,
I've got all that to look forward to.
Oh yes,
kids who are still listening to like Wheels on the Bus, so it'd be interesting to see how that develops.
Yes, yeah, cool. All right, well, look, thank you so much for your time today, Hannah. It's been really good fun.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Yeah, and I will get over you calling my band rubbish on that podcast, but it's going to take a while.
If you do another in-person event, I'll come along.
When we actually play our own songs, then that's
Oh my God, when you do that.
That would be well. I'd love to do that. Actually, me and Joel have sort of kind of teased it over the years. Before lockdown, we were like, "Oh, we'll have to do something," and then lockdown. It's sort of every anniversary we think, "Oh, let's do it. Let's do something," and then just life gets in the way, doesn't it? But I'm pleased that we got to do that one bit, and then you never know. We might get out and do something else, but hopefully before we're all too old to be able to do Jarvis style star jumps on the stage. All right, Hannah, thank you so much, mate. Oh, where can the people find you online?
They can find me on Twitter at Hannah Fern, which is FEARN, or they can find me in the Independent or the iPaper, bit of everywhere really, and quite regularly appearing on the podcast Oh God, What Now, which is all about centre ground of politics, really, centre left. So if you're anti-Brexit and love a bit of politics, listen in. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Wonderful. All right. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on.
Brilliant. See you soon.
Dressed up for fame, riding her perfume downstairs. Makeup like glue, she danced round the room to the sound of her corduroy flares. Let's go to town, taxis all round, we could stop for a couple of beers. He looks at it all, stifles a yawn. She tries not to look like she cares. What do I do now? Are we going under? What did I do wrong? I thought we had.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's really good to catch up with Hannah. As I said, I have not really spoke to her for 25 years or something. It's crazy, really. So that was good fun. And do make sure you check out her stuff on the Independent and Oh God, What Now podcast, where she's a regular. I would love to get back out and play in the band again. Me and Joel have talked about it, and actually talking to the Breezer guys the other day, these Oasis guys, I thought, that'd be fantastic to get back out and do a gig. But anyway, Right, let's move on then to this audio now from the YouTube videos I've put up recently. I hope you guys enjoy this. As I said, go and check out the YouTube videos if you want to actually watch the videos as it's going on. But yeah, if you just want to check out the audio, then here it is. Hello and welcome back to the Oasis Podcast. Today we are going to be ranking every official music video released by Oasis from my least favourite to my favourite. Just to clarify, this is the videos released in the life of the band, so we aren't including the various lyric videos that have been released on YouTube in recent years. My criteria for these is really down to whether they're enjoyable. Are they well made? Do they accentuate and improve aspects of the song? Or do they detract from it? Now, the Oasis guys famously hate making videos. Check out Noel's hilarious commentary track on the Time Flies DVD, where he absolutely eviscerates the vast majority of them. That said, even though they hated them, there are quite a few on here that I would argue have reached iconic status. On the flip side, there are some that are not particularly great, and that's where we start. In last place, number 37, is Don't Go 6, I Have Some Might Say. The reason for this is that they didn't actually shoot a video for Some Might Say. The band was supposed to, but Liam never showed up. Hence, what was quickly rushed together was a mashup of their previous videos, mainly Cigarettes and Alcohol, but also Supersonic, the US version, Rock and Roll Star, and a few brief flashes of Liam's face from Whatever. I haven't interviewed him, but I have had some messages with the director Mark Sazy, who actually directed many of the early Oasis videos, including Cigarettes and Alcohol, and he was absolutely furious about them taking his video and splicing it up for something completely different without his permission. But what about the actual video? Well, I mean, it works, but only really because they've taken footage from other videos that work. So I suppose you do have to give them credit for the editing and making the most out of a bad situation. But still, the fact it was purely recycled material means it does have to be very low down here on the list. Okay, with those two out of the way, we actually now move into videos that are actually pretty enjoyable. At 35, I have Songbird, directed by Dick Carruthers. The main reason this is so low down is it just feels very basic. We get Liam in this rather silly coat with a big fluffy collar, strutting around a park, and then sitting on a tree and playing Songbird. And that's it. And that is it. I suppose you could argue that the song is a very basic song, and so the video simply captures that. And having watched it over the years, I've never had a problem with it. But watching it again now, thinking about it, it is a bit laughable. Liam lolloping about with his sideburns flapping around as mums push prams and ducks waddle around in the background. There is one great moment right at the end where a dog chases Liam. I think also the parody put together by Nico Tatarovitz, who I interviewed on the Oasis podcast, certainly helped point out the silliness of it, and seeing that, I've never really got over it, to be honest. So yes, at 35 I have Songbird.
I kid you, right? He's written a song called Nicole, right? And it kills me to say it, right? But it is fucking mega, right? And that is it. It's not about nothing, man, you know what I mean? People get given it's about, like, you know, my wife or whatever, right? But I'm not one of these pansy boys sitting around writing tunes about my wife, you know what I mean? It's just a song about me, haven't it, with a fucking bird, you know what I mean? Like, called Nicole. Next question.
Oh, I really love you, Nicole. Blood Appleton, you used to be in an all-girl band. It wasn't all saints.
Not hard, is it, writing songs? It's like making a sandwich with your face, isn't it? Bit of bacon, you know what I mean? You have a bit of cuttlefish, bit of cress, yellow pickle, brown pickle, it don't matter. Because I am the bollocks at making sandwiches.
Let There Be Love. This is pulled from the Lord Don't Slow Me Down film, which has some great footage, especially a lot of the backstage shenanigans director Bailey Walsh managed to capture. And we do get to see that in Lord Don't Slow Me Down, which we'll talk about later. This video, however, sticks very rigidly to just concert footage, all of which is in black and white and super slow motion. Now, I can see how the slow motion can look epic, but in this occasion, especially paired with a song that is in itself very slow and plodding, the whole thing is just a bit dull and uninspired. On the positive, I do enjoy some of the crowd shots, but overall a very boring video and a missed opportunity when you think of the footage that they did have. Number 3 with 29 we have at 28 I'm going with Roll With It. Similar to the previous video, it's a very straightforward band performance, although this time it is actually the band at least and not a tribute band. I always think of Roll With It as a summer song, and here seeing Liam and Noel both wearing white shirts, it's nice to see they've coordinated their summer wardrobes. It's a show with a lot of energy, with strobe lights and a few nice moments of the guys playing. This does really capture the feel of that magic summer of 1995, but ultimately it is just a straightforward performance video, and it isn't as good as some of the other performance videos coming up, especially from around Definitely Maybe. Hence I've got it all the way down here at number 28. At 27, and Wiz is back again, this time for the Hindu Times. We're in stark black and white again. These guys just love their black and white, don't they? And it's pretty much just a performance video, but the guys in this instance are in a rehearsal space. There are flourishes of weirdness, such as cardboard cutouts with guns and Liam swigging some milk, and then we see an x-ray of the milk going down into his gullet, which is unpleasant. Slogans are shown such as exist and pills or bombs. I don't necessarily think any of it means anything. I guess it all just adds to the ambience. My favourite element is near the end of the video, where the guys are stood around playing and Liam and Noel even share a mic, which is great to see. It has that real Beatles vibe, I love it. It was exciting when this came out in 2002 as Oasis were back with an upbeat tune, whereas their last few videos had all been very slow and plodding. So this was a great return to form, really enjoyed it, but ultimately it's not a great video, so hence it is here at number 27. At 24 we have Stand By Me. Now this is one of the boldest choices of any of the Oasis videos, and Noel hilariously rips the piss out of this on the commentary. So it's a tricky one for me, because when I first saw this I thought it was amazing, but over the years, I don't know, it doesn't quite hold up as well as some of the other ones. Basically what you see here is a scenario playing out where it seems like everyone is being completely shit to each other, but then as the video carries on it becomes clear that actually everyone is trying to help each other, as a runaway motorcyclist careers through a shopping centre. There are a lot of nice little Easter eggs in there. The two twins are also in the Guy Ritchie film Snatch, and little nods to Radio Supernova and the Be Here Now release date and things like that are really good fun. It's all really well shot. I think the colours are really vibrant, and on first watch you do really get that moment as you figure it out. But as with most things built around twists, once you've seen it for the first time, you've kind of got the joke. It doesn't really hold up well on repeated viewing, so I've got it here at number 24. At 22 we have The Shock of the Lightning. Designed by Julian's House and Gibbs to tie into the Dig Out Your Soul artwork, this is a mesmerising mash of different colours and art styles all coming together. We have some footage of the guys playing, but buried under heavy effects so that you can't even really make them out. The first shot is little homage to the Rolling Stones Hot Rocks compilation album, and overall it's a fun, psychedelic... Hello and welcome back to the Oasis Podcast, and it is time for part 2 of our ranking of every single Oasis official music video. So this should be good fun. If you haven't checked out the first part, go and hit the link in the description to go and listen to that, numbers 37 to 21. But here we're going to be starting with number 20. So at number 20 we have Lila. This is one again similar, I feel, to the Let Forever Be video, as we have a female protagonist, even with a similar haircut, thrown into a world of psychedelic madness. However, in this case we start off in black and white, and she's in a pretty horrible situation. We've got scary dogs and pretty evil looking geezers. And finally she makes her escape and she's thrown into a Technicolor orgy of madness. Oasis are playing once again in their designer clothes era. Liam rocking a cravat and shades, and Zach has got a very Keith Moon mod jacket. Lila starts off having a great time, but then it turns into a bit of a bad trip as faces get distorted and it all goes a bit freaky. I like the way the performance is integrated. You want to have a bit of performance, but how can that then fit in with the story of the video? I think in this way they've done it really well. I enjoy the vibrant colours and all the effects, and overall the design is really interesting with lots of bizarre outfits and costumes. When the trip gets too much, Lila heads back to the real world and we get a nice little nod to Don't Believe the Truth's garage doors. The only thing I feel though is a little bit concerning is she's in a horrible situation in the real world. Then she goes into this dream world where it starts off great, but then it goes horrible and intimidating and scary. But then she goes back to the real world where it's still horrible for her over there. So she's got a choice: nasty black and white world with these vicious geezers and scary dogs, or the colourful messed up madness of the Oasis party, which is a really scary, horrible trip. Couldn't her come into the Oasis world have kind of saved her, and then she goes back and it's like at the end of Back to the Future where suddenly everything's a lot better for her because she's got that newfound confidence? Or would that be a bit cheesy? I don't know. But anyway, it's sort of a little bit of a strange way to end it. But yes, Lila is a good video, number 20. At number 19 we have the other Acquiesce video. This is apparently credited to Jill Furmanovsky. This was released in support of the Master Plan Best Of, and it takes footage from the GMEX gig at the Be Here Now tour and intersperses it with lots of backstage fun and footage of different things from the Be Here Now tour. It's great to be transported back to that time of absolute madness. Fantastic to see iconic moments like Noel charging through the airport with the Union Jack guitar, and it's just wonderful to see the guys having a great time. Also, this version of Acquiesce here has Noel doing a lot more complex lead playing as compared to the record and to the arrangement that Noel was playing in 1995 and 1996. I really like that. It's got a lot of John Squire sort of moments. Overall, this video does pale a bit in comparison to the main road performance of Acquiesce that's captured on There and Then, which is a shame because this is a great performance in its own right, and it does have that more complex guitar playing that I prefer, but nothing can compare with that main road performance. So you kind of think, well, if you were going to release something to promote the Master Plan, couldn't you have released a slightly different song from the Be Here Now tour? But anyway, this is still a really good, enjoyable video. Love all the backstage stuff. The desert, which looks amazing, and I really love the way the image is framed with the multiple windows showing different things. It maybe is a little bit higher up on my list because I interviewed Nick Egan and he gave me some great insight into how this came together, so I suppose that's always in the back of my mind when I'm watching this video. I love the fact that we pick up where we left off with them getting off the Go Let It Out bus, and the whole video is these deep oranges and blues. The editing's great with lens flare, and then when it comes to the fashion as well, Liam's rocking two great looks: the red collarless jacket and then that fantastic blue and white floral shirt. While Who Feels Love is certainly not one of my favourite songs, and the video is not groundbreaking, it's one where I really think the concept did exactly what it was required to do and was executed fantastically well. An added bonus is the reference to Zabiskie Point with the explosions at around the 4-minute mark, and as we know from the other Nick Egan directed videos, he loved to put in little references to older films, and this is the one here. Now at 15 we have the Master Plan. And this is my highest ranked video by far that doesn't actually feature any Oasis member team. We get into a US version. We have the US version of Supersonic. Now a lot of you might see this and think of this as stuff from the Some Might Say video, but that's because a lot of this Supersonic US version hadn't really been seen in the UK and was then reused in the Some Might Say video like we talked about on part 1 of this video. Once again directed by Nick Egan, this was designed to get play on MTV, and the frenetic editing style and bold colours are certainly flashier and grab the attention more than the UK video, which is quite straightforward and filmed on a roof in King's Cross. We see the guys in and out of cars on the road experiencing some very weird things, including huge dinosaurs. The performance element, much of which was cribbed for the Some Might Say video, is really well shot, with multiple lights within a dome giving it a far different feel to a typical gig setting. As always, Nick Egan is referencing another film, and in this case it's The Man Who Fell to Earth. There's a number of shots that pull from that, although it's not one I immediately got, so check out the interview I did with Nick, where he goes into that in a bit more detail. Now, in a way I do think this is a better video than the UK Supersonic version, but I have it a bit lower here because the fast editing and the setting being in America, it loses some of the lo-fi Mancunian charm of the early videos, so it's quite a bit lower than the UK version. I have it here at number 14. Okay, one above it at 13 is a similar story, hence I've got them both next to each other. Okay, into number 11 now, and I think anything from here, to be honest, on a good day, could be number 1 spot. They're so close now, from 11 all the way up to number 1. But at 11 I have The Importance of Being Idle. The overall tone of this video is spot on, and perfect to kick off with the UK version of Supersonic. This was many people's first introduction to Oasis, and what a way to introduce yourself. The guys look cool as fuck playing on the roof as planes fly overhead. Here was a band in typical high street lads clothes, playing cool, simple rock and roll music. The moments that really stand out for me though are not necessarily when they're trying to look cool, but when we see them let loose a little bit. There's a great shot of Gwiggs laughing with his hair being blown in the wind, Liam charging towards the camera with his hands behind his back and a big smile on his face, the lads having a kickabout with a bit of rubbish. This wasn't just a band of cool musicians, these were lads that you wanted to hang around with. At 9, here's one you might have seen before. This is Wonderwall. It's got by far the most views on YouTube. It's got by far the most plays of any of their songs. This is really the biggest song in the Oasis canon, and this video is definitely a reason for that. It really pushed it into millions of homes around the world, especially in America, and it drove Oasis on to be the biggest band in the world for a while. This video has become so iconic. I mean, what more can you say about it? It's bloody Wonderwall. Liam's never looked cooler. His hair's fantastic. There's loads of great little moments. I love seeing Bonehead try and look cool but then cracking up. And obviously seeing Scott McCloud is a wonderful little Easter egg, forever immortalised in his very brief stint in the band. Nigel Dick directs here, and he had the good idea of leaving props around for the guys to play with to keep them active. So while they're never comfortable doing videos, actually having little things to keep their attention works really well. I love the way the camera spins. I love the point where Liam turns to the side and we see that flash across a number of Liam faces. But the video does lose some points for me for some other things that were thrown in there. The circus performers, the clowns, the ventriloquists and things. I mean, what the fuck's all that about? And saws flapping around. There was no need for that. That just makes it a bit weird and unnecessary, and I don't know what the hell's that got to do with anything. Clowns, what? Weird. But anyway, you can't argue with it. An absolutely iconic video and one that made such a huge impact. At 8, we are staying in black and white for Whatever. This was the last one directed by Mark Zazie, before he then got pissed off with them about them reusing a lot of his stuff for the Some Might Say video. And we are in black and white here for Whatever, as an extremely hungover or possibly still drunk from the night before Noel really is the star here as he shows off his best little jig. He steals Liam's shots, he scoffs McDonald's, he sweeps up, he's just on great form. Looking at this and Wonderwall back to back, there's a lot of similarities actually with the black and white setting, the musicians wandering around playing, but at least it's not random circus performers here, it's actual string players. I love to see them at this stage of their career where they're still in a good frame of mind, happy to goof off for the cameras. Liam's got such a happy-go-lucky disposition throughout. And then the one element that really lifts it up a notch is in that Here in My Mind section, when we get some really cool little effects switching between two shots to create that real disorientation. I think that works with the section of the song really well. But overall, a really fun video that captures the guys at this moment in their careers where they know they're getting big, they know they're good, but they're still having fun, and they haven't got the kind of the detached coolness that they would come to later. At 7 we have one of their lesser seen videos, Rock and Roll Star. Now this wasn't a single in the UK chart, so hence it wasn't really played very much over here, but it's one that I really enjoy, and it's one that I am always happy to flick on. The footage is taken from the famous Live by the Sea gig at Southend, which is an absolutely blistering performance, and interspersed with that we've got some great footage of the guys pissing about on the pavilion. It was such a genius idea to give them little cameras, so as they're running around capturing footage of themselves, we see them taking part in all sorts of typical seaside behaviour, like going on bumper cars, go-karts, going bowling, etc. It's just what a great idea to let them catch themselves. It just means they loosen up a lot more than if it's just, a camera pointed right at their face. The only downside for me is the super fast editing style. With all the added effects over it, it just gets a bit too much. I'd just love to have it slowed down a little bit and just really enjoy the moments of seeing the guys bombing around and having a great time. At 6, 5, what a great opening shot of some chavvy kid we have there, and we have Shaker Maker. What I really love here is that we're in Manchester. We're around the back of Peggy's house, we're outside Bonehead's house. The guys are in Manchester, they're playing the music, and it's a lovely glimpse into where they were at this point in their careers. We get a nice little cameo from Brian Cannon, who's driving the car. We take a trip to Sifters, which has then immortalised that place, and it still looks exactly the same as it did back then. If you're ever in Manchester, you've got to go and pop in and go and speak to Pete. The real fun part though for me is at the end when they start to have a kickabout, including Gwiggs wearing a motorcycle helmet for some reason. It appears that that is the secret to get a great Oasis video. Give them something to kick, whether it's a football or some rubbish. It'll always get them engaged. I also love all the little clips with the kids from the local neighbourhood randomly turning up in the video. I'd love to track down one of those kids. If you're watching this, was that you? Were you there wandering around Burnage in 1994? Let me know. At 5, All Around the World. Directors Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris were coming off having utilised live action and animation for Tonight Tonight by the Smashing Pumpkins. That cleaned up at the MTV Awards by using a style inspired by Georges Méliès's famous film A Trip to the Moon. This time they would continue to use a mixture of live action and animation, although rather than going with the early days of cinema, they went more with a 60s, 70s style, mixing a bit of Yellow Submarine with a bit of Terry Gilliam Monty Python. The band take flight on a yellow spaceship and go through various mad journeys. When we talk about a video managing to encapsulate the spirit of a song, this video achieves that brilliantly, with so many crazy and memorable images, including a man made of sausages, which really tickles Noel in the commentary track. And if you zoom in, I think he might have the face of Man United footballer Lee Sharp. I've never seen that mentioned anywhere, but I think it is. What do you think? Anyway, my highlight though is Noel being revealed on top of the spaceship for the massive na 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 as trumpets shoot out all around him. This is the most ridiculous over-the-top song, and we've got a ridiculous over-the-top video to go with it, and I absolutely love it. At 2, how about helicopters? Here is Do You Know What I Mean? At number 1, my pick for the Oasis, and that wait for Do You Know What I Mean to come out. It was the most anticipation I'd ever had for a song and a music video, and to see it for the first time, it absolutely blew my mind. Here they were, my favourite band, the biggest band in the world, back with an absolutely monumental song and a video that's just as huge and crazy to go with it. Where do we start? Helicopters, the flares being let off, the Full Metal Jacket setting, Noel playing a flying V guitar for some reason, Liam's haircut and shades, and Liam mouthing the backwards elements in Backwards. It's just brilliant. It's a remarkable piece from start to finish, and when you think of the money they spent with the multiple helicopters flying overhead, this was an indie band a couple of years before, wandering around the back streets of Manchester, and now they're here. It's just ridiculous. So there we have it. Do you agree with my ranking? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll look forward to speaking to you again very soon, either here on YouTube or over on the Oasis Podcast, which is available where you get all your favourite podcasts and some rubbish ones. Stay in touch, stay engaged, and stay young. All right, hope you guys enjoyed that. As I said earlier, if you want to go and check out the actual YouTube videos, then please do. If you can go and hit subscribe over on YouTube, that would be fantastic. I've just gone over 1,000 subscribers, which was quite a big deal. So yeah, there's certain steps within YouTube, and one of them is getting 1,000 subscribers. So that was excellent. So yeah, do go and check me out over there. One other thing I've just dropped over there, actually, I'm having a bit more of a play around, trying to get my head around video editing. And yeah, I've put a little mashup together of the song Begging You by the Stone Roses and Begging by Macdon. So I've put the video for that on YouTube, but I'll drop a little clip in here.
Put your loving hand out, baby. I'm begging. I'm begging. Yeah, come on, go. 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 Yeah, come on, go.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one, but it's one of those things that I've always heard that Begging track and thought it would work well with Begging You. So I thought, let me just try. And actually, yeah, I think that mashup worked out really well. Yeah, go and check out the full version over on YouTube. I'll link it below. One other thing, we've had an email come in from Ollie Ford. He has reviewed the Council Skies single.
Hi, James. I hope all is well. I just wanted to give you my take on Council Skies, the new single. I heard it for the first time day before yesterday. Initial take, I really like it. I think the music from this album, or this upcoming album, is, for me, it's the strongest stuff he's done since the second album. So feels like a bit of a return to form for me. I think all of the singles are good, and I really like the fact that all the singles are quite different as well. So he's sort of being a bit experimental, but without going too crazy and doing the whole cosmic pop thing. So sort of staying within guitar music, but exploring different styles of guitar music, which I think... excuse my son. All right, buddy, you right? So... yeah, I just like it. I like the vibe of it. I think the bossa nova thing is, I think it's great. It's just got a really summery feel to it for me. So I've been listening to it whilst I've been charging around. I mean, the big thing is that you've obviously mentioned in the podcast is the kind of plagiarism of his own previous song, and that did jar a little bit when I heard it for the first time. And every time I listen to it, I can't help but think of the other song. But I think some key things to say around this. Firstly, I think because the melody is pretty much identical and the lyric is pretty much identical, but because it's dropped into a song that has a completely different vibe, I am starting to get over it, actually. I think if the style of the two songs was very similar, I think it would make it unlistenable. But I think because that melody is dropped into a song that has a completely different style, I think you can get away with it. And I think if you microanalyze it a bit more, it's like, well, the melody is very close. It's not actually identical. So in the Ballad of the Mighty Eye, it's I'll find you, and in this one it's I'll find you. So like, at least he does change the note at the end one step down, and then pedantic. I mean, it's the same verb, isn't it? Find, found, but slightly different tense of the verb being used. I'm probably clutching at straws there. It's just a shame that you went for that verb at all, because I feel like if given the melody is one note different at the end there, and if you'd have just chosen a different verb, if it was something like underneath the council skies I'll meet you, something like that, it wouldn't be, you might sort of think, oh, that's quite similar to that other song, but I think it would be acceptable. So for me, it's the use of the same verb that really kind of makes it jarring. I'm surprised that he went with that. There's loads of different verbs you could use there. Underneath the sky, I'll find, meet, whatever. There's loads of different things you could say. Why choose that verb and really sort of hammer home the similarities between the two? But putting that to one side, overall, I think the song is fantastic. Love the sound, love the vibe. I agree that I think he sings it really well. I'm looking forward to hearing it live. I think it's 4 really strong songs off this album. If I was to rank the songs, Dead to the World, number 1. I would probably say this, number 2, Pretty Boy, number 3, and then Easy Now, number 4. I just feel like Easy Now is just a bit of a plodder. I think Noel rates that song a lot higher than I do. Some strong stuff from him this go round, and I'm looking forward to hearing the new album. I just wish it was out a bit sooner. It feels like we've been waiting forever for this one. So yes, roll on June. Cheers, James.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Ollie. Lovely to hear the cameo as well. Yeah, some great points there. Fantastic stuff. All right, well, look, that'll do it for today. Many thanks for listening to the Oasis podcast. And most of all, thanks go to our patrons. You put your money where your mouth is. It's greatly appreciated. You can become a patron at patreon.com/Oasis Pod, which is where we post bonus episodes and various other bits and pieces. Do feel free to give me a follow on social media, Oasis Podcast on Twitter, Oasis Pod on Instagram, and obviously over on the YouTube channel. That's the really big one for me at the moment. And always drop me an email if you want to, oasispod@gmail.com. It's always good to hear from you. And anyway, that will do it. Stay in touch, stay engaged, and stay young.